Netanyahu tried to buy Traore out with $1.2 billion. His reply changed Africa forever. The world was stunned when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reached out to Burkina Faso's young leader, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, with a proposal worth $1.2 billion. It was meant to be a quiet transaction, a deal cloaked in diplomacy but soaked in manipulation. But what happened next would shake global politics. Traoré didn't hide the letter. He read it live on television, exposing what he called the price tag on Africa's dignity. Overnight, his words ignited a fire across the continent, sparking protests, pride, and a new sense of unity among Africa's youth. This wasn't just about one nation's sovereignty. It was about the soul of an entire continent standing tall. Stay with us as we uncover the full story of how one leader's defiance sent shockwaves from Tel Aviv to Washington. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to support fearless stories like this one. The message was simple. Stop criticizing Israel's policies, soften your stance on Palestine, and protect their business operations across the African continent. In return, billions in aid, development, and diplomatic favor. To many politicians, this might have seemed like opportunity. To Captain Ibrahim Traoré, it was an insult. When that letter reached his hands, Traoré reportedly read it 3 times. The more he read, the clearer it became that this was not an offer. It was a test of conviction, a test of integrity, a test of whether Africa could still be bought. But this time, something was different. The soldier from Ouagadougou who had risen from the ranks of commandos to become head of state had seen enough of how the world treated his continent as a marketplace, a pawn, a supplier of minerals and labor. He understood that rejecting the offer wasn't just about principle, it was about reclaiming Africa's voice. So he did the unthinkable. Instead of filing the letter away or negotiating behind closed doors, he read it live on national television. Cameras rolled. The entire country, and soon the entire continent, watched as Traoré held the paper in his hand and said, "This is how they see us. This is how they think they can control us. But Africa is not for sale." The silence in that room was electric. Journalists who had covered dozens of African leaders said they had never seen anything like it. This wasn't the polished language of diplomacy. This was defiance, raw, unapologetic, and public. And it didn't take long for that defiance to echo far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Within hours, social media lit up. Hashtags like #AfricaNotForSale and #WeStandWithTraoré trended across 14 countries. Students in Bamako and Nairobi organized marches. In Accra, Ghanaian youth painted murals of Traoré, holding the letter with the words, "We will not kneel." What began as one man's response became a continental roar. But it wasn't only symbolic. Real political shifts followed. Mali's government ordered a full audit of every Israeli business contract operating in their country. Niger temporarily recalled its ambassador from Tel Aviv. Chad suspended diplomatic talks, while South Africa's foreign ministry called Traoré's move a masterclass in moral courage. Across Africa, conversations began changing. For the first time in decades, leaders were being asked by their own people to justify every aid package, every security partnership, every deal signed behind closed doors. The younger generation wasn't buying the narrative anymore. They wanted transparency, and they wanted dignity. In the streets of Ouagadougou, the youth started calling themselves the uncompromised generation. They weren't waiting for speeches. They were demanding change. "We don't need handouts," one student said into a microphone during a rally. "We need fairness." As the movement grew, so did the pressure. Western diplomats called emergency meetings. International newspapers labeled Traoré reckless. Some claimed he was isolating Burkina Faso, risking economic collapse. But while foreign analysts debated, something remarkable was happening on the ground. Other African nations stepped up to fill the gaps. Nigeria proposed new trade routes. Ghana opened banking alternatives. South Africa offered agricultural cooperation. For the first time, Africa was solving Africa's problems without waiting for permission or aid. Behind closed doors, the backlash was fierce. Economic sanctions were discussed. Foreign intelligence networks started probing Burkina Faso's communications. Yet Traoré stood firm, repeating the same message. If the price of independence is discomfort, then we pay it gladly. That moment marked a shift not just in politics but in psychology. For generations, African leadership had been shaped by fear. Fear of sanctions, fear of isolation, fear of losing aid. But now, a leader had shown that defiance could be contagious. 3 days after exposing the is not wealth unless it builds schools. Oil is not wealth unless it powers hospitals. Diamonds are not wealth unless they bring water to our villages. The crowd roared again, because in those words was a vision of real progress, not measured by foreign approval, but by the well-being of Africa's own people. The president went further, calling on African nations to trade with one another instead of begging the West for loans. Africa does not need aid, she said. Africa needs belief. She spoke of self-reliance, of industries built by African hands, of farms that feed African children, and of universities that teach African history written by African minds. Then her voice softened. She looked at the younger faces in the crowd, students, dreamers, farmers' children, and said, "To the youth of Africa, the heartbeat of our future. You are not too young. You are the generation of transformation. Your weapons are knowledge, innovation, and unity." The crowd fell quiet. Every word sank deep. She reminded them that the revolution of the new Africa would not be fought with violence, but with education, with invention, with self-belief. "Do not wait for permission to rise," she said. "Define yourselves." This message, though wrapped in hope, was also a warning to the old guard, the leaders who still cling to foreign approval. "Do not fear Traoré's courage," she told them. "Learn from it. For your people are watching, and they are tired of words." Then she paused, and in the silence that followed, she said something few leaders have dared to admit. Power means nothing if it does not uplift the powerless. At that moment, the people rose to their feet. The air was electric. Her words were no longer a speech. They had become a mirror reflecting every African nation's pain and possibility. Finally, she turned her message outward, to the watching world. "Africa is not your enemy," she said firmly. "We are not." The world had underestimated what happens when a continent wakes up. They thought they could buy silence. Instead, they purchased awakening. By the time the dust settled, one truth had become clear. The letter that was meant to silence a soldier had given voice to a generation. The billions that were meant to buy loyalty had bought revolution. And in the echoes of that defiance, a new Africa began to rise. One that speaks for itself, acts for itself, and dreams without permission. Because in the end, Traoré's message wasn't just for his people. It was for every nation that has ever been told its value is measured in foreign currency. It was a reminder that integrity, once chosen, is priceless. And somewhere in the silence of global diplomacy, one message still lingers. Africa is not for sale.